Get out by March. It's much worse than I thought. Hey, everybody, you're watching Bull, Boom, Bear, Bust, back with another dose of economic reality. And we continue to bring the frontline news, or the most important news and information regarding the state of the U.S. economy, and for that part, the global economy, because basically it's all the same banking system that runs the United States also runs the world. It's money that's conjured out of thin air, and therefore it keeps these bubbles inflated and keeps the cost of living much higher than it would be otherwise. If you just looked at incomes and what people are making, and if you align that with the cost of everything, the cost of housing, the cost of automobiles, the cost of food, then you would see prices crash anywhere from 50 to 90%, depending on what you're talking about. Housing would be over 80% if we're not for the ability to conjure this money and the ability to borrow this conjured money and bid up the prices of these assets. And so there goes the economy. That's basically summarizing why we're seeing the reason everything costs so much here. But let's start right here. And when I say it's worse than I thought, it actually is. This is something that I actually didn't realize. But I did see a couple people mention this in comments before, but I wasn't quite sure what they were talking about here. And this is out of CNBC, and we're talking about phantom debt. Americans are racking up more phantom debt. Why that's a problem. So there's this trend, and it's been big in the past few years, but another record-setting year this year for buy now, pay later programs. And the reason they're called phantom debt is because these types of loans, or types of ways that people borrow money, are not reported to the credit reporting agencies. So therefore, they're not looked at in the overall debt picture by a lot of the banks that look at your debt. So this may be hidden debt, also known as what they're calling here phantom debt. Over the holidays, the use of buy now, pay later loans hit an all-time high. Because lenders generally don't report to the major credit reporting agencies, it's hard to know exactly how much debt is currently out there. So another thing to add on top of the pile of concerns, or the pile of problems with the U.S. economy, and in this case, the U.S. consumer. These loans can also be hard for consumers to keep track of, which can lead to debt problems, experts say. Well, we know debt's at an all-time high. We know that defaults and delinquencies are beginning to increase. In fact, default car loans are already at an all-time high, and we're starting to see prices of cars come down as a result of it. So when you start seeing defaults, that's when you can really start expecting a correction to happen in the bottom line, or the cost of whatever the item is, that's currently in the bubble. And I have to give credit where credit's due. Even though this was reported recently by CNBC, the place that I found the information here was just a video that showed up in my recommended videos feed here on YouTube. And this is the channel State of Disarray. I believe it's called State of Disarray anyways. Let me just make sure I get it right, just to give credit where credit's due. Yes, State of Disarray Official. And they did a piece on this. Buy now, pay later, popular payment option now leading to phantom debt. All right, so what do you think about this phantom debt situation, folks? So actually, when you hear me talk about how bad things really are, in many cases, and in most cases, it's much worse than what I'm reporting, right? So that's why I tell people not to just believe what I say, to go do the research yourself, because when you do the research yourself, a lot of times you will find that it's even worse than I'm saying. It doesn't mean there's going to be a collapse. In fact, it's just the opposite. It's programs like this, the buy now, pay later programs, that allow people to continue to buy things that they normally would not be able to afford. And so therefore, instead of a declining cost, or instead of a bubble deflating, the bubble gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and prices don't correct, right? Imagine if you had car loans out there that were given out because they had the wrong data on how much debt people are already carrying. Imagine how many mortgages are out there that are given out to people because, again, the mortgage lenders may not know how much debt these people are actually carrying with this phantom debt. Would we have seen the housing bubble bust? Would we have seen other prices of other goods and commodities and items crash a long time ago if it weren't for this ability of phantom debt? And the overall economy may be in a lot different place right now if it weren't for the ability for people to borrow this money and therefore to buy these items, and we're talking about thousands of different items wherever you go. I shouldn't say wherever you go, but on many e-commerce sites, how many times have you seen the option, oh, pay this in 6 easy payments? You could be buying something for $20 on Amazon, on eBay. You go to buy a mattress, you have a firm out there saying, oh, no, we'll finance this. And it's just not a credit card. It's not a traditional loan. So it's not reported as a typical debt item would be reported. All right, so very interesting. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. I've always said here, I don't put timing on things. You know, there's people saying it's going to go, I say the housing bubble is going to go bust, or the economy is going to collapse by this date, by that date. Folks, they can find new ways to kick the can down the road, things you've never imagined. And but then you have the threat. You have the threat of not just massive inflation, but hyperinflation and destroying your currency. Now, we haven't seen that here as rapidly as we've witnessed in other countries as far as the destruction of the currency, because we have the world's reserve currency, and it's not something that you can just easily unwind or transition away from. We're seeing the beginnings of that with many different countries across the globe right now, but the US dollar is still the dominant player. The question is, how much longer is it going to be the dominant player, and how much preparation, how much time do we have before we see the demise of that? So therefore, you have to have investments in place, as well as still have dollars, still have cash, because if we see a correction, you're really going to wish that you had some cash available to buy up these goods and items. If we see a massive deflationary event, now what could that be? A lot of things could trigger that, but the bottom line is you have to have a bigger scare in the markets, and investors have to be more scared of whatever drop, whatever situation came up. Just think about 2020, that brought the markets down for a short time. But in other words, investors have to be more scared of whatever happens, more scared of the news of the situation that comes up than they are of the confidence that this system is going to be propped up by endless debt creation, endless liquidity being funded into the banks, endless programs to help people buy things that they normally couldn't buy, like the buy now, pay later. Who knows what else they could do? So I always say, don't put timelines on things. Just go about investing and go about your day-to-day proceedings just as if nothing was happening, but continue to prepare. But you don't want, what I'm saying by prepare is, you want to be ready for something bad to happen, but it may not happen as soon as you think. It may be a long time, and therefore you may not see these bubbles burst. You may not see the costs come down like you'd expect. So we'll continue to watch it, especially, automobiles. You see that coming down. So it does lead us to believe that there's going to be other bubbles bursting here in the very near future here in 2024. And there's even more evidence recently here that's came out that leads us to the conclusion that things are really changing here in the U.S. economy. We see more corporate bankruptcies. We know that last year almost set a record, except for 2020 was a worse year for corporate bankruptcies than last year. But we know what happened in 2020. But even without a global health crisis, last year almost set a record in corporate bankruptcies. That should speak volumes to anyone out there looking for to see what's really happening with the U.S. economy. Audacity, the largest U.S. radio company, files for bankruptcy. Audacity, the radio podcast giant, filed plans for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection to reduce its debt. The restructuring agreement will allow Audacity to slash its total debt load by 80%, about $350 million from around $1.9 billion, the company said in a statement on Sunday. And this is another example of zombie companies, corporate America, basically insolvent, but yet there's ways out there, there's legal ways to keep these companies going, keep these companies operational. But in the meantime, the employees are still getting paid, and you have this overall effect in the economy of people still keeping their jobs. And how many millions of jobs? It could be hundreds of millions of jobs out there that are only in existence because of companies able to go into massive amounts of debt and therefore not file bankruptcy sooner rather than later. And a Chapter 11 means they're just going to reorganize. They're not going to go out of business so far, according to this article. Chapter 11 is just a reorganization, and it allows people, it allows companies rather, to get rid of debt, similar to how people get rid of debt in a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, except Chapter 7, you're discharging the debt, but look at how much debt is going to be reduced. 80% of the debt of this company will be reduced, right? So how different would the economy be if it weren't for things like this? Over the past few years, we have strategically transformed Audacity into a leading scaled multi-platinum audio content and entertainment company, said the CEO. However, the perfect storm over the past 4 years of macroeconomic challenges facing the traditional advertising market led to a sharp reduction in radio ad spending. So think about that. Why would radio ad spending see a sharp reduction? Well, that's because the people that are supposed to buy the things that are listening to these radio commercials and ads, they're maxed out. They don't have much money left. And that leads us into our next topic here. We need to transition now into consumer savings, or I should say their lack of consumer savings. And this one comes out of Business Insider. Let's take a look at the headline on this one. The economy has run out of dry powder as inflation has slashed excess household savings, investment firm says. And we've reported on this, and we know that household savings is at or close to a 40-year low. But it's programs like the one we talked about at the beginning of this video that still keeps Americans purchasing like never-ending purchases, right? Even if you file bankruptcy as an American, you can still get a credit card very soon, very quickly after filing a bankruptcy, and therefore still go out and participate in the economy by buying more stuff and accumulating more debt within weeks after filing bankruptcy. I know that sounds crazy, but this is the industry that I work in. I've also seen it personally with people that I know. This is the way that it works here. So therefore, I see inflation as a bigger threat than deflation. In fact, if you watch my videos, you've heard me talk about it here. I think deflation is actually the cure for the illness. A economic collapse, a economic correction is the cure for the illness. But instead of taking the necessary steps to allow us to overcome the illness, we're just taking more and more medicine that's really not helping. It's covering up the symptoms, but it's really not getting to the source of the problem with the economy. And let's just see how they're reporting it here. The dry powder of cash savings that was expected to cushion the economy has run out, as inflation has practically wiped out U.S. households' excess savings. Consumers built up huge cash savings during the pandemic, partly due to a pullback in spending, as well as government-issued stimulus checks. Yeah, and that's part of it, but a lot more than that. The cash was thought to be a buffer to the slowing U.S. economy, giving consumers some leeway to keep spending despite tightening financial conditions. And this is true everywhere you look, not just with consumers, but with corporate America, as we just talked about, with the banking system, as we just talked about. The banking system is being propped up right now with an emergency funding program that's supposed to run out in March, because this was initiated back in March of 2023, right after that string of bank failures that we saw here in the U.S. And it was supposed to be a one-year program, a one-year temporary program. But we look at it and we see that the amount of funding needed to keep everything operational in the banking sector is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So instead of unwinding it, it continues to expand. Every week we look at it, it gets worse and worse and worse. In other words, the amount of life rafts needed to save everybody are increasing. It's hundreds of life rafts. Now it's thousands. And now it's tens of thousands of life rafts that are being thrown out into the water for the amount of, in this case, banks that need to be rescued. Right? So will it be done by March, or will they have to extend it? Well, I think they're going to have to extend it. Otherwise, you're going to see the economy collapse like you've never seen before, and it's going to make 2008 look like a walk in the park, right? So just because debt is high, just because consumers are tapped out for the most part, doesn't mean that the downturn is going to happen. They can throw a lot of things at this. This rescue program could be extended for another 10 years. The problem is you're going to start seeing a lot of other problems pop up instead of a crash, you're going to see a lot of other problems that have to do with just things costing too much. All right. So we're going to wrap this up, folks. Thanks for watching. What do you think about this? Things worse than I thought. The phantom debt, the rescue program, they're supposed to end in March. I don't think they're going to end it. How does this all play out? How does this end? If they're not going to let the economy correct, where does this lead to? Is this going to be hyperinflation? Is this going to be something very bad down the road? Or is everything going to be normal? We're not going to see any repercussions of this. All these market manipulation methods, there's no repercussions. We're not going to see anything bad happen. In fact, things are going to get better. We're on the road to economic recovery. That's what some people are actually saying. What do you think? Please let me know down below. Until next time, everybody, keep stacking and make sure you subscribe. Hit like on this video, please, to help us stay alive here in this platform. I think there's some powers that be that really don't like what we're talking about here, according to what I'm seeing here with the numbers and things like that. Everybody, thanks for watching. Keep stacking. Bye for now. Peace.